The purpose of this tutorial is to show how the tools work and some interesting things about the tools that perhaps some people hadn't realized before. I'm going to mostly work from left to right here, but of course the first thing on the left is undo. In order to undo something, we have to have something there to undo. So now this is the tutor on the left and the student on the right. Okay, so let's start with the student. Let's say the student was writing out a BEDMAS question. So we have 3 plus 8. Now, when I draw my 8 here, I haven't let go of the mouse yet. Notice that the tutor can't see it until the student releases the 8. Okay, releases the mouse. So bracket, okay. So the other person doesn't get to see it until you let go of whatever you're using to draw. Let's say we had plus 4 times 5, okay, etc. Okay, so there's the question. So, and let's do a little bit of writing for the tutor. Let's say the student couldn't write anymore and said, oh, there's supposed to be a subtract 17 on the end. Okay, so there we go. So now undo redo. So the tutor wrote last, so it's the 7. So if I start undoing, notice I'm undoing the 7. Of course, redo puts it back. So let's take off the 7 completely. Now, if the student does undo, notice that it's what they wrote last that they're undoing. So if I get rid of the 4 times 5, and of course redo would put what the student wrote last. So remember that redo and undo are dependent upon the user. Okay, you're only undoing or redoing what you did, not what the other person did. Okay. And of course, the trash can clears all. It doesn't matter whether the student does it or the tutor does it. And of course, you've always got this message, do you want to? And of course, if I undo, I can undo that last command if I wanted to. So let's say we cleared them all. We'll get the student to do. Okay, so everything's gone now. So we've talked about the first 3 things. Of course, we're using the pencil tool. Whatever color is here is what the pencil tools, if I want to change to green, then, I'm now writing in green. Okay. The selection tool, of course, is for, moving things, whatever it is, and let's say I go back. Let's do a text box. Okay, so the tutor is going to make a text box. Now, notice that the student doesn't see it yet. Okay, until the tutor clicks outside of that, the student doesn't get to see it. And the same with the student. Now, let's say the student wanted to put the word new in here. Okay, so the student has edited it. The tutor doesn't get to see that edit until the student clicks outside of the text box. And of course, the reason this is green is because the tutor started it even though the student has green. So if the student was, to make a new text box, and type that, the tutor doesn't see it until the student clicks outside of that text box somewhere. So that's a little bit about text boxes, and anybody can edit any text box. So if the tutor wanted to edit this, let's say we wanted to make that a subtraction symbol. Okay, now it's a subtraction symbol. Either person can edit text boxes. Okay, shapes. If you go into the shapes here, of course, there's 8 different shapes here. The line tool, we do use that quite a bit to draw lines. Remember, there's a square here. If you want to make a rectangle, then just drag one side of it. You can make any size you want. Of course, you could grab a corner to make it bigger or smaller too. And of course, thing about shapes too is you can rotate them if you need to rotate them. Okay, there's a little handle on that you can use to rotate them. And you can actually rotate text too. We don't really have a need to do that very often, but you can. Okay, that is possible to do. And of course, if you rotate it incorrectly, you can just undo. The grids, they're very handy for drawing graphs. And of course, we have a large grid and a smaller grid. And of course, if you did a grid or something and you want to get rid of it, if you go back into here, that just gets rid of whatever you did. And even if you did like the axes, if you go back in here and do that, it gets rid of them. Or the number line too. Okay, there's the number line in the middle, and of course, go back in here, and that gets rid of them. Now I'm over here to the last few. To upload an image, you and of course a student or a tutor can do this. So actually, let's say the student's doing this. Okay, so where is my question here? There we go. Okay, so let's say the student uploaded this question. And sometimes the uploading takes a moment to come across. So there's the image that the student uploaded. And images is a great way for students to share questions. But let's say that the student uploaded this image, but they only wanted to help with question 4. Notice that the image is taking up most of the whiteboard. And of course, if I move it and make it smaller, it's getting hard to read it. So I do want it to be a decent size. So as the tutor, you ask the student, which one do you want help with? The student says, just question 4. So what the tutor can do is make it larger. Okay, so it's taking up the whole whiteboard, and writing on images isn't a good idea because sometimes the writing will get behind for one of the users, student, tutor, one of them, and that's problematic. So one thing a tutor can do is if I'm a PC user, so I'm using my snipping tool here, and actually I'll show you a smaller version of it. This is what the snipping tool looks like. So when you click on New, I'm going to take a snip of this, and I will save it on my desktop. I'll just call it Capture. There we go. Okay, so let's minimize that. So I'm going to upload that image. Here's my capture. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the original student one off to the side like that. And of course, so here's my question, just question 4, and of course, we can get rid of this stuff. And actually, you can use the eraser tool. I really didn't talk about the eraser tool here yet. Okay, so we did all that. And so now we have a lot more room to work on the whiteboard, okay? Because we have all this room down here. Now, a little bit about the eraser tool. Let's say we have this question, and let's say I'll do red here. Let's say I, maybe circled this and used maybe green. I'll underline this part here, and of course the student's seeing the same thing. If the tutor has written something like on top of something that you want to get rid of now, see if I click on the eraser tool and try to erase that, I erase the whole thing. So I'm going to undo, and I actually have to undo a couple things. Now, if you wanted to just erase that red, what I would suggest is grabbing it with the hand tool and drag it down here and then erase it. Okay, so and the same thing with that. If for some reason I wanted to get rid of just the green, and sometimes it can be difficult to grab it. I'm grabbing the image. Actually, what you can do is move the image out of the way if it's hard to grab something small. Erase that, and then we could put the image back up there. Now, I already talked about the text box, and I want to show you a little bit about the text box. To get a consistent size, and of course, you can always drag to make things smaller. If I were to, notice I made it 2 blocks wide. If you had a grid up, or you could estimate how wide you're dragging it. If I make another text box, and it doesn't matter how far down I go, if I make it, it's 2 blocks wide, it's going to be the same size. Okay, so the size of your text box is dependent on how wide horizontally you make it. For example, let's do black. If I go to 3 blocks wide, notice it's bigger. Okay, so the size of the text box, and of course you can always make it smaller too. If you want to grab a corner, make it smaller. That's close to the same size as this. Then that's how you make text boxes bigger or smaller. So another tool that I haven't really talked about yet is My Stuff. So let's say a student had a Save Whiteboard. They can go into their My Stuff. Now, this is only Save Whiteboards. It's not like a Save Chat session. If they click on My Stuff, it comes up. So they can actually bring up a Saved Whiteboard. Okay, so there's that question. During a live chat session. Okay, so notice that everything that, and this has 2 whiteboards, you see there's 2 at the top there. Everything that we had before is gone. Now, of course, the save option isn't, you can't use it while you're live with a student. And of course, this is the glossary. Student or a tutor can both access the glossary. And of course, it's alphabetized. So if I want to, look at a term that starts with H, if I want to know what hexagon is, there's the, now notice that I'm seeing it. In order for the student to see the same thing, you'd have to tell the student to. So click on the glossary icon. And, if you want to know what a hexagon looks like, go to H. And there is the third one down is the hexagon. Okay, if you click outside the glossary, then it disappears. Now, another thing I want to show you, I'm going to delete what's on here. So I drew a triangle. So let's say the student question was, I want to learn how to use a protractor to measure angles. So I drew a triangle, and of course I'm going to upload. In the Mathify resource bank, there is a rectangle, a protractor. And if you go into shapes, there's the protractor. Now, we have an interesting problem here. Okay, the protractor was uploaded after the triangle was drawn. So everything you do was always in front of stuff you did before. So this is what the tutor could do. They could move the protractor off to the side and do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw, on top of what's already there. And see, because I'm drawing this after I drew I brought up the protractor. Okay, so that's pretty good. Good. Then now, see, the protractor is behind the orange, so we actually could use the protractor to measure that angle, and see it's just a little under 60 degrees, maybe 59. So remember, when you're making objects, writing, uploading images, text box, whatever, everything you do is in front of stuff you did before. And it's not like Microsoft Word or something like that you can change what's in front or back. Can't do that, not yet anyway. So, but that's something you could, like a sort of a workaround. And one last thing before I go, I'm a PC user, but if you're a Mac user, there are commands to do screenshots as well. And it's Shift, Command, and then the 4 or $sign key, and you get a crosshairs very similar to the snipping tool. And if you're a Mac user, if you haven't used this before, I'd suggest playing around with this a bit to figure out how to use it best. But you can do the same thing that the snipping tool does. So that's a lot about the different tools. On the Mathify toolbar on the bottom, and I hope you found this useful. And that's the end of the tutorial.